On this episode of the show, I have with me Mo El Mahallawy. He is CTO and co-founder at Shepherd, and we're going to talk about a day in the life of a startup CTO and how the days look different from the early days of just starting out, seed stage, Series A, and we'll also talk about how Mo balances delivery and business functions, prioritizing and protecting his time, and how does he find balance? Mo, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Tell us what Shepherd does before we dive in.
Yeah, Shepherd, we are a commercial insurer or insurtech. We currently go and cover commercial construction and soon to be expanding later this year into commercial energy as well. Our target market is contractors that do $20 million and above in business. Our sweet spot is 300. These contractors are doing all kinds of work across the country. They're building data centers, they're building offices, bridges, roads, hospitals, schools, you name it. So just a really cool business to really help out, what kind of is the infrastructure of this country and what makes this country continue to run, which is building things that we all get to enjoy.
Absolutely. Very cool. I guess let's start off at the top. We want to talk about what your day looks like and how it's changed, obviously, through the various stages of the company's growth. So maybe take us back. You're co-founder, CTO. Well, actually, before you take us back, give us a sense of just how big the company is now as just a baseline as we go backwards from here.
Yeah, so we started the company Y Combinator winter 21, so January 2021. So it's been about 4.5 years today. We are just about to be 50 people, Series A. Kind of the split regarding my role specifically, about 1/3 of the company is engineer, product, and design. And so the other third, there's another third that's underwriting, and then the last third is everything in between. So ops, recruiting, analytics, customer success, and so on.
Absolutely. I guess, being a CTO and co-founder, you wear different hats and that hat evolves. Just, I guess, take us back when you first were starting the company. Was it just you? Did you have any other founding engineers partnering with you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so the story of Shepherd actually preludes even getting started before even YC. So I had met my co-founder Justin, and him and I wanted to work on things together. We just didn't know what. And he had started his career civil engineering, big construction, New York City. Started a construction tech company, sold it up to Autodesk, and was there ready for his next thing. And I was at Airbnb. And the first idea that we worked on and kind of what he pitched me on is he's like, I want to do Asana for content creators. And this was back in April 2020. We were all at home consuming a ton of online content. And so it's like, I really like this guy. I don't know if I love this idea, but I'm going to kind of see what we're going to do here and see what happens. So even prior to starting Shepherd, we built a bunch of different MVPs. Most of them didn't work. We had one actually that got a whole bunch of users, and ultimately we just didn't think there was enough for us to actually build a pretty large business for or with. And so we decided to pitch investors with this idea for customer success. We did the whole talk to your customers before you build any line of code. So we were very much like two people on a deck trying to pitch, and we probably could write a book about how to get every Silicon Valley VC to say no to you. We would talk to them and they'd be like, love you guys. This is awesome. Very interesting idea. But I've talked to 6 different teams in the last 6 weeks working on the same thing. Let's talk again, the next 6 to 12 months. And so that was like a, oh my God moment. What are we going to do? We happened to also, I had won a hackathon, and we got kind of an opportunity to, it was a YC hackathon, but we got an opportunity to apply and interview for YC. So it's a 10-minute, interview, goes by really quickly. They call us later that evening and they're like, we really like you guys. We are just astonished that you haven't built anything. So let's do an office hour in 2 weeks, and let's see what you can do. And so for 2 weeks, I just put on my headphones and coded nonstop. We show up to the office hour, and we're like, okay, let me show you what we did. And it was a product that effectively pulled data from your database and put it into Salesforce, what today is high touch and Census. And they were like, "You built this in 2 weeks?" And we're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, congratulations, you're in YC." We got into YC, and right before then, Justin and I were like, "Is this what we want to do, or do we want to do something else?" And we decided Shepherd as commercial insurance, and specifically construction to begin with, is where we want to dive into. And in the very, very early days, the biggest question is like, well, what do you do in the first however many months? You can't just like snap your finger and start a commercial insurance company. And so where we spent a lot of our time in the beginning is, can we kind of in a way build a mousetrap for brokers? Let's build something that could benefit brokers, get them to know about what we're doing, kind of telling them like, hey, we're going to build, commercial insurance eventually. But like, here's some free tooling to help you get to know us and our brand and so on. And then it'll be a little bit of a data play so that when we get into actually underwriting and being able to back some risk, we already have their like attention and their usage and so on. So that's where I spent a lot of my kind of first 6 months. Daniil, first engineer, founding engineer to join the team, still here. He's awesome. He joined us in June, shortly after Avi, who's also another founding engineer, and Kostas, who's now head of underwriting, joined us. Here we are, just building what we're doing today. But we quickly shifted by, the summer of that year. This was again, 21, shifted into, okay, things are starting to move pretty quickly on the insurance side. We actually need to evaluate or build a policy admin system. So that's going to house everything to do with our workflow, our risk assessments, our pricing, modeling, our legal language, and so on. And so that's where we spent, the next 8 months until we got to market in March 22.
I guess, I mean, that's a pretty awesome story. That's definitely roll up your sleeves territory. And I guess, when did, and it sounded like early on you were coding much of what we just, you just talked about. I guess as you kind of progressed and you secured, the seed round, and you're now past the baseline. You're hopefully adding people to your team. Your role as co-founder CTO, how did anything change at that point? Was it still pretty consistent, or were you starting to see some shifts in where you were spending your time?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, I was, I was engineer number one, in a way. And, I definitely talked to, some of our investors or mentors or just, people that I know, like, hey, can you talk to this, like, CTO, their seed stage or their pre-seed, and they're trying to figure out hiring and this and that. I'm like, number one, I'm very flattered that you're considering me as someone who could give advice, but when I hop on the call, I'm like, hey, listen, like, this is probably the hardest time for you as a CTO. I kind of like, I look back and I kind of laugh, because I'm like, today, it is really hard to be a CEO, because now you're really setting and materializing the vision. You're trying to figure out how to take this thing multiple X what it is. Like, you found product market fit. Now, like, make it grow, make it work. But in the early days, I would argue maybe like CTOs have the hardest job. Because, and this is not to like discount, like, a lot of what my co-founder Justin did is huge, and really like is, very much why we're here today. But in the early days, you're like engineer number one. You're also recruiter number one. You're also, product, and designer number one. And then once you hire one or two people, now you're also an engineering manager, but you're also writing code. And so like, you're wearing so many different hats. And I look back at that and I was like, man, that was such a hard time, but it was a really fun time for sure, because I was stretching myself in so many different ways. I left, Airbnb as a senior software engineer, and all of a sudden I had to become an EM, and I had to become a software engineer handling not just like a product engineer, but I had to do DevOps, and I had to do, security, and I had to do all these different things. So pretty quickly became more than just, you own this little thing, go build it, within a large organization, to you own this thing, go build it, go hire people, go manage those people, set expectations, what's the vision for a product, and so on and so forth. So, I would say, like the early days are probably some of the most challenging days for CTOs. And I'm sure you're going to probably ask me about this, but like, how is my role transition? And like, this is really the fun part, because like, we have a machine that's actually working and it's growing. And, I get to work with like really talented engineers and product people and design people, to figure out how to like continue to grow this thing, which is really cool.
Absolutely. I guess before we talk about, the transition at a, later, bigger stage, I mean, what you just described, and you said to another, I guess, being a mentor to people coming past the stage you were at is always good. And you were telling them this is going to be the hardest stage. I guess let's dive into that just for a second, because I'd like for people to maybe who have not gone through this, right? Maybe they want to go down the path of being a founder. When it is the hardest stage, as you described it, what were particular challenges, and was it more of a time thing? Was it a stress thing? Was it a combination of new responsibilities? You described learning all these different roles, which is pretty incredible to have to pick up that many different hats and juggle and balance them. Can you maybe dive into that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I almost wish it's we could jump back into time machine and look at like what a day in a life looks like, but like the way I described it to these like, CTOs and co-founders, I'm like, it's going to be like chewing glass, and like, you're going to have to be okay with it, because like, that's what it is. Your life is going to suck. But and then it's going to be great. But like, your job is to like make this work. And so like, I'm going to kind of like take a bet here a little bit, just for fun, is like, day in the life backwards. Like, what do I do before I was going to sleep? I was in bed on my computer on LinkedIn, sourcing people, and messaging people. Why? Because like, that was something that I could do, where I could, already I'm like kind of low brain capacity, and I can, go sift through things and like message people and so on and so forth. I'm not, looking at very detailed docs or something like that, or writing docs. So like, before I go to sleep, I'm doing that. Maybe before that, I'm having dinner. Before that, I'm maybe like punching out some code and working on some features. Before that, I'm in the office and, collaborating or meeting or whatever it is, or helping out some of, the engineering, early engineering members. I'm in meetings all day. I'm like brainstorming, I'm whiteboarding. It's a lot of like in-person things. And then like, I like show up early to work, so then I could catch up on things like emails and figure out like, what am I going to do for the day and so on. So, my day almost like has to get sliced into different chunks based off of like what needs to be accomplished that day. And then that week, and every single day it changes. But I had to be like very judicial around the kind of things that I am working on when. Again, not to say that like, being on LinkedIn is like not an important thing and I could kind of like do it on cruise control, but rather like, I can't be spending the hours between like 10 and noon, on like LinkedIn. I had to kind of allocate my time, and attention to different things. But yeah, they were really fun, long hours. Like, this is like, I look back at that and, you're building stuff and you're throwing it away, and you're building stuff and you're throwing it away, and you're kind of seeing what works. And any assumption that you made like last week changes this week. So I even look back at like some of the decisions that we made, and like, man, we got really lucky on some of the product and engineering decisions. And then there's many others that, still till today, like 4 years later, we're kind of paying some of that tech debt, because we just like didn't know any better. We were a bunch of people that had never built, an insurance, organization to the size and scales we are today. And having to like figure it out. Also, there was no ChatGPT, so it wasn't like I could, spend a day prompting and being like, if I needed to build a system, like, how would you design it or build it? Like, it was very much like talking to other, one of even, I would say like, this is a cool insight, is like in the early days, we were talking to other insurtechs that were not doing commercial construction, but trying to understand, what have they done? What does their systems look like? What are decisions that they made that they're proud of? What are ones that they regret? And just kind of like taking some of that learnings, and then kind of deciding what our roadmap is going to look like.
Very cool. I guess speaking of learnings, when you look back, and you mentioned people reached out to you. Did you have a network of people you reached out to kind of have as that guidance and kind of help along the way?
Yeah, I mean, kind of half joking, but it's like early days of 2021. Everybody's at home, so it was very easy for me to like text people or message people and be like, hey, can I get like 15 minutes of your time? They're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting at home on, like I've been on Zoom all day. I rather like talk to somebody, that's different or whatever it is. So I did, one of the things that I did do, I'd moved to San Francisco knowing that eventually I want to build a startup. This was something that like my folks pushed me to do, from an early stage. My late father was like, have the entrepreneurial spirit, like, I think you got to go and do this. And so, I knew from the early days, like, this is what I wanted to do eventually. And so just being very thoughtful about what I did to lead up to that moment. So even like looking at an organization like Airbnb, I was very lucky to work at a place that is like a, generational, like, iconic company, attracted some of the most talented people who went off, who previously did amazing things and then came to Airbnb or went off to do amazing things. And so what I did do is, like, I tried to network really hard and to, like, meet who would be people that would be exceptional and would be up to something really interesting. And so even I look, for example, to give him credit, like Lenny's podcast is really famous now, but like Lenny has helped in the early days. He started Air Angels with Dan Rumenick, who also was like a longtime Airbnber, and they're both, incredible people, but they really helped in the early days. As an example, and, other, whether it's like even engineering challenges or problems, and I'm like, ooh, I know an engineer who I used to work with at Airbnb, or, I like was in the same meetings or did some extracurriculars that I like overlapped with. I'm like, hey, can you help me out with this? How do you think about this or that? And that was really helpful, in the early days. So that would be my advice. Like, if you're a software engineer at a large organization, especially one that's like high flying and talented, like, go meet as many people. There's a lot of code to write. There's a lot of work. There's endless amount of work to do. But having a moment where you're at a place that's really special with really special people, that's temporary.
That's very cool. And, if we were to fast forward to kind of contrast your day, because you said it does get easier. What has specifically gotten easier as you guys have grown into the next series?
I think one of the nice things is, obviously my role has changed and it's much harder in many ways and it's much easier in many ways. But let me talk about the things that are harder. I think one of the challenges that I, just using myself as like data point number one, but, from what I hear from others as well, is like, I very much said in like the early days, it's really hard to be a CTO. It's now really hard to be a CEO at this level. You have to grow the organization. You have to create processes. The number of reports that you have as CEO grows, etc. But the big thing is like the CTO role changes quite a bit as well. You're no longer just writing code and you're kind of adding and pushing output, but now you have to get out of code. You have to let people who are smarter and more talented than you cook, and you have to then think about vision, and you have to think about looking around the corners. What does the business need and how does technology become an enabler? It's a lot of docs, reading and writing docs, which, some engineers love, some engineers dislike. And so the transition from being just like a software engineer or an engineering manager to now you're a CTO is a very, very different role, especially, putting on the co-founder hat as well. So that part is hard. And I find myself, whenever I feel very stressed or a lot of pressure, I'll go back to coding. I'll like contribute some code here and there. And I have to remind myself, like, am I doing this because I'm running away from something? Or am I doing this because I think I could be like an enabler, to the team or the business? And oftentimes it's the former, but the easier side, the more fun side, I guess, is like, I get to be ahead of like the team a little bit and the company. I have to look around the corner and I have to see what are technologies, what are challenges, what are vendors, what are, other people doing, what can we learn, how can we build better, and so on, that others are doing, that I'm uniquely qualified to be able to do. And I think that's kind of like one of the things that gets a little bit easier, because it's a little bit more creative. In the early days, it was like, we need to build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in order to do whatever. And now, like, I don't need to be building those things myself. I could actually think about like, what happens after we achieve those things? Where are we going? The second thing I would say is like, I get to dabble, like, we have infrastructure now, we have things, we have code, we have this, we have that. Like, I get an opportunity to, I like literally built this thing, which now it's cool because I get pinged all the time about it. People are like, can I get access to this? And I'm like, you already have access to it. But I built this thing with, by leveraging AI and, again, leveraging all of the things that we have in place. I'm able to like solve this like point solution and dabble with some of the modern technologies. And, that's a really cool, like, place to be. And if it works out, it's like it's a bet that, is like a multiplier to a team. And if it doesn't work out, it's like, cool. Like, Mo was the CTO and co-founder. He's able to try this thing and it didn't work out. Like, no harm, no foul. It's like encouraged. And that also sets an example, which I would say is the third thing, which is more fun too. It's like, I could like set an example. here's how to write great code. Here, I like, don't have, I wrote this in between meetings, but like I'm also writing tests. So I'm setting like an example, and that's kind of like really fun to see that permeate across the team.
Absolutely. I love that. And, I guess maybe this question kind of ties into some of what you've mentioned. You've got to dabble when it comes to finding balance in your workday between these various functions. And again, it could be at any point. I mean, even now, I'm sure you have push and pull in different directions. How do you balance your time so that obviously it's very easy to say yes to everything, but you'll quickly get yourself in trouble. How do you balance yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting because, one of the things that I'm learning a lot is, and obviously is like talked about, there's plenty of books about, there's plenty of podcasts, there's plenty of self-help, shows, whatever it is, right? About time management, time balance, etc. But I actually think there's another very important factor that I am learning more and more, which is like energy balance and energy management. Um, you know, I think, I could work, there's only 24 hours in a day, and I could work as much as I need to. Or should, but more importantly is like, where am I allocating my energy and attention, and when is more important. So one of the things that I, again, like taking inspiration from my co-founder, Justin, who, he shows up at work at like 7:15. And I find that like I am able to accomplish way more. Whether I'm spending 10 hours a day working or 12 or even 8, showing up even like in the days where I show up at 7:45 or 8 a.m. to the office, makes such a big difference. This is where I have like a boost of energy. I can actually do some like really high thinking, high leverage work. I'm not getting distracted. And even if I'm getting, 60 to 90 minutes of that, it's been really helpful, really valuable. Like the days where I, let's say I'm showing up to work at like 9:45 or 9:30 and I'm at the office till 7:30 or 8, like great. I put in the hours and the time, but the energy is just like not there. It's not the same. And almost any of the time after 6 is kind of like a wash. I'm really, on cruise control there. So, I think I've had to be a lot more judicial about that. Whereas again, in the early days, it was like, dude, I got to crank for 12 hours. I'm just going to sit here, put on my headphones, and I'm going to like push code for 12 hours, knowing that like it's going to go up and down in terms of like good or bad, solving some of these problems. Like you could solve it in 5 minutes. You could bang your head at it for half an hour, like whatever it is. But when I'm thinking, when I'm reading docs, when I'm strategizing, all those things, it's really important for me to like really have my energy tank full. And so I've been very mindful about, managing that and how that fits with time management.
Absolutely. And I guess if you were going to take the trajectory you're on and kind of observe the company's growth, is there things that you're already forecasting that will change in the next series of growth? Are there things that based on what you've seen through the various phases up to now, or is that something where you're like, listen, I cross that bridge when I get to it?
I think the biggest thing is, what I touched on a little bit is like, it's funny. In the early days, I was like, man, I only know what we're going to work on for the next like week or two. Like I only have that foresight. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just over time now I've built like, I'm able to see the horizon further and further, just because I've been doing this for a while, or I'm growing as a leader or whatever it is. But, we've now gotten to a point where anytime, there's things that come up and we're like, yeah, hold on to that. That's a Q1 project that we'll work on. Right. And so like now we're even thinking about, we have so much work and we have so many resources that we're already starting to think about what we're going to work on in the next 6 months, which is kind of a fun, inflection point. But, to kind of answer your question more directly, we could endlessly do work. But is it the right work? Is it the best work? Is it the thing that's going to move the company? Is it the thing that's going to attract some of the best talent, some of the best investors? Is going to really propel the company forward? Or is it just work because we know we have to do it? And, we are just trading like resources and time right now. And so the thing that I have to kind of figure out is like, Yeah, the thing that we're going to do in 3 months, maybe we don't do it because here's like a much bigger bet that we should be taking a swing at, and it may work, and that's fantastic, or it may not work whatsoever, and that's going to be a bummer. But the big punchline is like we got to take a swing on certain things, and unless we identify what those things are and have been thought out, we're just going to do like the work that we know we need to do, and we're going to do the tech debt that we know we need to do, which is important, but it also could mean that we could be trading off time and attention to things that are bigger swings, add on to tech debt, but like you don't get paid for tech debt. Your business grows when you kind of take on some of these bets. I say that with an asterisk because obviously there's a lot of companies that have been, bogged down by tech debt, but like that's, right now we just have a lot of opportunity to chase, and we have to take big swings.
I'm gonna temper my what would be my next question, which would completely derail the end of our episode. I'm going to stay on topic here. I guess on the flip side, you've walked us through some of what obviously you've gone through as your own growth with the company's growth, and learned along the way how to manage your day, and it does sound like there are certain phases and difficulties with each. On the flip side, you are running at this Mach whatever speed. It is really, you're moving at a pace that has to be dealt with because that's what the expectations are. You do have limited shelf life. You have to deliver. You have all these different pressures. Is there anything you did, or maybe still do, to be able to center yourself from a mental health standpoint? Because I mean, even if someone's younger on age, you can only push so hard so long until, not burn out, but you just become mentally fatigued, and you do need some time.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I could say that, I could say I feel like there's obviously a lot of, I could be like, you got to take care of yourself. You got to work out. You got to this, you got to that. And I could put in a plug and say like pickleball is the best sport in the world. And I 100% think you should do it. But I think there's a lot of advice out there around, just working out and how that's helpful for your mental health. Being around friends and family, how that's helpful for your mental health, etc. So I've definitely went, like listened and read all those things, or many of those things. So I'm trying to present something that's a little bit different. And, I look back and, maybe it's again, and like and the intention of like presenting something different. Like I look back and the times where I was most mentally fatigued or most stressed, or maybe like my mental health, was at like a low, was the times where I felt like I had very little control. And most often it's because I lacked planning. And I think like, especially from a CTO perspective, from a software engineering perspective, whatever it is, like I'm very much the like hacker 0 to 1, like, type of person. And the times where I felt most pressure was now going from 1 to 10, and having to kind of like, leave that part of me behind. And now like almost kind of like you have to like break some bones in order to like reheal them the right way and kind of do that. And that was some of the times where I'm like, man, like I cannot catch up fast enough. I cannot like I'm barely even figuring out what we're going to do. And then, today, let alone like what we're going to do this week, this month, this quarter, whatever it is. And so the more that I've been able to allocate time for myself to like slow down, to kind of like collect my thoughts, to think, etc. The happier I was, honestly. And, the more I was able to just like run faster and faster. By no means am I kind of like, a professional skier or whatever it is, but, I guess like similar to skiing, if you're going to kind of go full downhill, like straight line it, you're likely going to hurt yourself. But like the only way to do that is, you're going to have to work on your technique, make sure your technique is really solid, and, you go from like green, blue, black, double black, and so on and so forth. And so I think there's some similarities there, which is like, I have to work on my technique, which is like the planning, the slowing down, etc. And then that way I can actually move faster and faster and faster. Or like as the hill is steeper, it's fine because like I know my technique is solid and will hold. So yeah, that's kind of like where I would say like was some of the hardest transitions. And honestly, it happened really fast. It went from like, whatever, we were kind of low millions, like business, pretty small, under 20 to like, wow, we're growing really fast. There's people getting hired every month. Like got to kind of figure out what we're going to do and where we're going. And I can't just like wing it. So that's what I would say is maybe like the times where I had the lowest, but then also like I'm kind of riding the high right now, which is just better planned.
Very cool. Mo, I appreciate your time to come on and kind of walk us through some of your journey, evolution, and learnings of, becoming a co-founder and CTO and all that comes with it. So thank you for that. If somebody wants to ask you a follow-up question, if they heard something and they want to learn a little bit more, what's a good way of doing that?
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. That's like probably the best. So find me on LinkedIn. Just shoot me an email. I'm Mo at withshepherd.com. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to follow me on Twitter or anything else. I'm Mo from YYZ, but I shoot me an email. I answer emails, I promise. And then LinkedIn, I do answer LinkedIn as well. So, those are two ways that you could get a hold of me pretty easily. And then, yeah, just overall happy to answer any questions, happy to give some advice. That very much open to that. There's a lot of people in my life that have given me their time and attention and really got me to where I am today. So, want to pay that back, want to pay that forward for the next wave of, founders and so on. So yeah, please reach out.
Very cool. Again, thanks for being on. Thanks for taking the time. And that's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. Mo did an awesome job of walking us through his growth and kind of what it looked like to be a day in the life of a CTO at different stages and the responsibilities, the pressures, the stresses, how he kind of coped. He's already been a mentor to other, co-founders, and he himself had to go through that process as well. So share this episode with somebody who might be interested in, going down that path. I think it's great. I'd really appreciate it. And if you could also like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show's going for you. I would appreciate that. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.